If you say theme park, most people on the planet immediately think of Walt Disney World. That's because Disney has been the undisputed king of themed entertainment for the better part of 70 years. Any competition has never really been a serious threat. Until now. To quote myself, quoting the late, great Fred Willard, what happened?
Hanging with kids, your chocolate bar, cat cage needs a life. Buffy with burgers, squishy with bark, cat cage needs a life. Cat cage needs a life, yeah.
The year is 2025, and the theme park wars are afoot. In one corner, we have a company that's opening a huge, cutting-edge, and impeccably themed new park, building a smaller park for little kids from scratch, creating a year-round installation of one of their most popular seasonal events, finishing up a sleek new roller coaster built on a literal hillside, and confirming plans for even more expansions before these current projects have even been completed. And surprise, it's not Disney. Universal is spending an ungodly amount of cash to not just become a legitimate player in the space, but to be recognized as the true home of creativity and innovation. Meanwhile, their counterpart in Disney Experiences is changing priorities from theme parks to a fleet of uninspired cruise ships, hawking timeshares at every conceivable turn, destroying beloved and historic attractions for their new ones, spending a lot of time talking about new experiences without actually building them, and letting decades-old retired attractions literally rot in plain sight. The one-time innovator, gold standard, and bar setter for themed entertainment is about to be officially, emphatically, and unceremoniously dethroned. The reasonable fans of Disney's legacy, myself included, are left to wonder, how did this happen? Why did this happen? And is there anything we can do to fix it? Grab your favorite sipper and popcorn bucket, folks. It's time to get irrationally mad about theme parks. Let's do this red letter media style.
Number 1. No one in charge knows what they're doing.
Before I get to the parks, let me share a related story. About 20 years ago, Disney had a massive hit on their hands with High School Musical. I worked at Nickelodeon at the time, and High School Musical was a big deal because it defied the conventions of the 90s and early aughts. Cartoons dominated the kids' TV landscape, mostly because of how easy it was to sell all kinds of licensed toys and things like that. But High School Musical showed that live action could sell a ton of junk too, and in theory, be an even bigger cultural hit than any cartoon because it didn't feel as kiddie. Now obviously, the reason why High School Musical was such a smash was because it had a simple story, a let's say, likable cast, catchy tunes, and it felt fresh. But the takeaway from the execs at Nickelodeon at the time was, this is successful because it's live action and not a cartoon. So instead of Nick continuing to invest in quality animation, the thing they did best, they scrambled to create their live action version of High School Musical, which of course no one remembers and I had to look up the name of, even though I worked there when it came out. These execs at Nickelodeon were the same people who told me they needed to understand why their feature films division was struggling when Disney was releasing Wall-E, funny enough, an animated film, and Nickelodeon was releasing Hotel for Dogs. Woof. For the next however long, animation took a backseat to tons of forgettable live-action shows, because the powers that be thought the secret to success was real kids instead of cartoons, and not programming that resonates with the audience. This is what happens at every company where the people making decisions are completely removed from the user experience. Nick completely missed the point of what made High School Musical a phenom in being reactionary and trying to hastily recreate it. And to their discredit, Disney also missed the point with nearly every non-High School Musical live-action thing that came after it, because they were desperate to recapture that moment without understanding why that moment happened in the first place. So what does this have to do with theme parks?
Number 2. Even a broken clock is right sometimes.
Back in the 80s, 90s, and into the early aughts, the Orlando theme park biz was absolutely dominated by Disney. Other parks like SeaWorld and Legoland and Universal were also there, and a cheaper option, but the experience you got at those places paled greatly to the experience you'd get at a Disney park. From customer service, food quality, hotels, operations, employees, level of detail, and variety of attractions, Disney was the gold standard in every category, and it wasn't particularly close. But before you can compete in all those other areas, you need a park with cool stuff that people want to do. So right before the start of the 2010s, Universal decided they wanted something they didn't really have in their parks: A globally beloved franchise, something with a huge following that attracted people of all ages that would also translate into a theme park land. And they landed it with Harry Potter. It was a big deal then, but at the time, we didn't realize just how much it would change the entire trajectory of the theme park biz. In creating the wizarding world of Harry Potter, they built a physical manifestation of the world in the books and the movies. Working directly with the creator of the franchise, they crafted a meticulous land that would give fans the opportunity to literally step into the universe they loved. You had a ride in the school the kids went to, you had the stores the kids shopped at, the drink they famously drank, the ghost in the bathroom where the kids pooped, and you could get a wand and do magic spells all over the area that either made stuff move, created fire, or summoned a dragon. They even got a British guy with an accent standing in front of a train, a thing that I assume is also in the movie. Universal was forced to make loads of concessions in how they wanted to build the area, putting a damper on how they would typically optimize sales and efficiency, but in the end, that hardline attention to detail led to creating a truly remarkable experience. And here's the thing. While of course, if you're a fan of Harry Potter, this land is mind-blowing, it's still wildly impressive even if you don't know nothing about Harry Potter. I've never read or watched a Harry Potter and have an active dislike for the fantasy genre in general, but it's nearly impossible not to be awed and have fun in this part of the park. It's one of my favorite areas anywhere. To recap, the Harry Potter intellectual property, or IP, was a perfect fit for a theme park because of its lore, its storylines, and its almost endless opportunities to live out the things you loved from the books and movies. But its perfect execution even further broadened its appeal to just about anyone who likes themed entertainment. The Wizarding World of Harry Potter opened in Orlando in June of 2010. It was unlike anything they had ever done before. It changed the course of themed entertainment forever, and little did we know, they were just getting started. 3 years prior, in May of 2007, the Wizarding World project was announced. Then, just 5 months later, Disney announced they were investing $1 billion to overhaul one of their West Coast parks, California Adventure, with the crown jewel being Cars Land, an entirely themed, immersive land based on the Cars movies. Now, California Adventure was in desperate need of a makeover, as in its infancy it felt more like the stock footage idea of a theme park than an actual Disney property, but the idea to turn a previously teased Car Land into Cars TM Land was almost certainly in response to Universal's announcement of the Wizarding World. So in 2012, Cars Land opened, and it was, like Wizarding World, a meticulous recreation of Radiator Springs, the fictional town featured in the first Cars movie. It had the shops the cars shopped at, the restaurants the cars ate at, the motel the cars stayed at, and the literal characters from the movie driving around the land for meet and greet opportunities. And also, like Wizarding World, it was astonishing from a construction standpoint. The fake mountain and butte, is that a butte? A butt? Whatever that anvil-looking thing is. It's absolutely fantastic, and with the cars from the movie racing by, you're so immersed by the land, you'd never realize that there's a 7-Eleven and a bus stop in Anaheim right on the other side of it. And also, like Wizarding World, the land is so perfectly executed that you don't need to be a fan of the Cars franchise to appreciate it. I have zero affinity for the Cars stuff, but Cars Land is one of my favorite places in the park and one of my most enjoyed theme park areas in general. Okay, so, pop quiz. What did the Wizarding World and Cars Land have in common that made them superior immersive experiences? Is it A, they are both based on billion-dollar intellectual properties, B, they are far more detailed than any other comparable lands on the planet, or C, it's both, but a detailed land that isn't based on a property can probably still be successful, whereas a land based on a billion-dollar property without that level of care most likely won't be. If you answered C, congrats, you've been paying attention. If you answered A, congrats, you're Disney CEO Bob Iger. Despite having nearly 60 years of evidence that said otherwise, Bob was convinced that the success of Cars Land and presumably Wizarding World was solely because they were based on movies that made a ton of money. In Bob's own words, if you analyze carefully how we achieved those returns on invested capital in the parks, it was all about the IP. So for quite a long time, new attractions and lands at the parks were based on essentially either very old IP or no IP, just an attraction. And starting really with Cars Land and Toy Story, and there are a few others, I can't remember all the specifics, we decided that almost all of our investment in the parks in terms of attractions and lands would be using that IP. And it's very, very clear what that delivers. Yeah, Bob, Disney was known as the peak of themed entertainment for decades because of IP like Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin, and totally not because of non-IP attractions like Jungle Cruise, The Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, Big Thunder Mountain, Space Mountain, The Matterhorn, Horizons, World Showcase, Spaceship Earth, with Wizarding World expansions on the horizon for Universal, and that threat snowballing into something that might eventually be cause for alarm. Disney was about to exit its age of developing unique, brand new concepts, the thing that made it great in the first place, and dive headfirst into the world of lands based on existing IP. This decision, while misguided, isn't something I'd be grabbing a pitchfork and torch over in and of itself. The far bigger sin was committing to this idea, whether or not those lands were any good.
Number 3. Execs are not real people who do real people things.
The same year that Cars Land opened, back in 2012, Disney CEO Bob Iger orchestrated the acquisition of Lucasfilm, and with it, the entirety of the Star Wars franchise. The first Avengers movie came out that year as well, and that acquisition of Marvel from 2009 was paying dividends, with virtually every released Marvel movie a smash hit and 600 more on the docket. Bob figured people love these Marvels, and Star Wars is a beloved franchise that hasn't made a good movie since the 80s, so let's make 600 movies about the Star War. What could possibly go wrong? Over at Universal, they realized they had a smash hit in their parks with Harry Potter, so they opened a second immersive Potter-themed land in Orlando, Diagon Alley, in 2014. This land didn't disappoint, with just as much detail, creativity, and imagination as the first. If it's possible, I know even less about whatever Diagon Alley is supposed to be than I do about the other Harry Potter stuff. But I like this land maybe even more, because it gives seedy, state fair energy in a classy way. A+. They also plan to open a replica OG Wizarding World in their Hollywood theme park in 2016. Again, Bob needed a counterpunch, and while I wasn't in the room with him, I imagine it went a little something like this. Hey, Cars Land was a hit. What other franchises out there made $1 billion? This thing Avatar made $1 billion. Oh yeah, I saw the trailer for that. The blue things, right? Let's do it. Call Rhodey. He likes all that weird shit. And so, in 2017, Disney opened Pandora, the world of Avatar, the billion-dollar darling, despite the fact that you've probably never met anyone in real life who would call themselves a die-hard Avatar head. My friend Dan once said, "I've never seen a movie that made more money with less cultural relevance." But again, they got lucky, because the look and feel of Pandora is also perfectly suited for a theme park. And like I said earlier, a land doesn't need to be based on an IP people love if it's awesome. Generally speaking, Pandora is pretty awesome. The architecture and environment in the land is remarkable. There's a ride with a unique spin on the classic simulator where you can feel the heart rate of the creature you're riding. There's the most impressive animatronic ever created. It looks beautiful at night, and there's a green beer you can get, which may or may not have been in the movie. I'll never know. But in spite of it looking amazing, something still felt kind of off. The ride with the amazing animatronic was pretty short. You couldn't meet a Na'vi. For it being their home planet, there weren't any to be seen outside of the attractions, and there weren't really any good interactive elements or anything. Overall, it was grandiose, but on a granular level, it felt like something was missing. In the past, when Disney opened up something new, it was all but guaranteed that it was going to be amazing. The words cost-cutting never entered your mind, and it might not have for some people with Pandora, but for me, this is when the stinky puffs of change began to be smelt. Fast forward 2 years to 2019. Universal had made some small updates and new attractions, but nothing at the scale of the Harry Potter stuff. And Disney had big plans in the works, another counterpunch to the Wizarding World. They were about to open Galaxy's Edge, a brand new land based on the Star Wars franchise that they had purchased 7 years prior. But as was becoming more and more apparent, Disney completely misunderstood Star Wars fans. They released 5 theatrical films in a 4-year span. And even the biggest Jedi diehards will tell you, that's 4 or 5 too many. Star Wars wasn't like Marvel. It's fueled by nostalgia and had a limited universe of characters the general public cared about. And people who actually, watched the movies and bought the shirts and lived their lives as Star Wars fans could have told you that. But the people making decisions are not real people. They are lifelong corporate robots who observe fans like lab rats, and more often than not draw completely inaccurate conclusions about them and what they want. Disney was banking on Galaxy's Edge being a massive hit, maybe even bigger than the Wizarding World. It's Star Wars! You idiots love Star Wars! So Galaxy's Edge opens, and while most Star Wars fans would have loved to walk through the classic environments from the original films, like you could do in Wizarding World, or Cars Land, or Pandora, Galaxy's Edge was based on a new planet that wasn't in anything. It has intricate environments, a groundbreaking ride beloved by almost everyone, and a replica Millennium Falcon which has another screen-based ride in it. And it has blue milk, because the Wizarding World was selling buttloads of butterbeer, so they used a throwaway moment from one of the movies and hoped it would catch on, just like the integral part of that other franchise. Like Pandora before it, the architecture of the environment was top-notch, but the experience of walking around the land was pretty flat. There were some characters and a loose storyline that played out with them, but there was no interactivity, no weirdos walking around, no alien creatures, no droids roaming about. The execs figured making a land and calling it Star Wars was all you had to do. But this land neither satisfyingly catered to nostalgia nor provided the truly immersive experience you'd expect at this point. Sure, it had one world-class attraction, but did the land as a whole measure up to Disney's own high benchmark? Again, this isn't something you would ever think checking out a new Disney thing in the past, but it sure did feel like some corners were cut and budgets were slashed. I mean, how cool would it have been to have interactive areas where you could use the Force and move some rocks with Yoda? What would make you want to walk around this land again once you've already seen it, like you could do with each installment of Wizarding World? Was this stripped down, largely lifeless space becoming the new Disney standard?
Number 4. Stop it. You're getting distracted.
Galaxy's Edge wasn't all that Disney had up their sleeve that year. While Disney's bread and butter for years was movies and theme parks and all the licensed junk that came with it, Iger wanted to do more. He wanted to expand Disney into a tech company like Apple, the futures in streaming and overpriced gadgets. The same year Galaxy's Edge opened, Disney finished their acquisition of 21st Century Fox, weirdly making The Simpsons part of their catalog, and launched their much ballyhooed streaming service Disney Plus. In their eyes, the future of the company. If you cared about the theme parks, this was bad news. The Fox purchase cost a ton, and Disney Plus wasn't ever going to be the future of the company because the streaming model, especially as it operated in that moment in time, wasn't going to last forever. Not a great investment. They weren't going to move forward with anything new in the parks when the company was losing a boatload of cash on all its other interests. While Disney was concentrating on its streaming platform and its myriad other non-park affairs, Universal announced something that would change their reputation and, in their hopes, the trajectory of the company forever. Epic Universe. Again, this was in 2019, and we all know what happened in 2020. The world was upended and came to a halt. Every park in the country had to pivot and stop construction, and every penny was going to be scrutinized with the travel and entertainment industry being decimated. In one corner, there was Disney, who decided it was a great time to focus on streaming. In the other corner, there was Universal, who decided it was a great time to take advantage of outrageously low interest rates on loans and stockpile cash for future development. So let's see how that all worked out.
Number 5. Oh no, it's not gonna get better, is it?
The first major land to open after the height of the pandemic was Disney's Avengers Campus. Now, I have a whole other video talking about the mess that is, which you should totally watch after this if you haven't already, because you'll love it and I need the watch hours. But I'll recap it quickly here. While the previous inklings of change were probably only felt by the most dedicated observers, see also dorks like me, Avengers Campus was a bust to just about everybody. It was the first new land Disney opened since, I guess, California Adventure as a whole that had a widely shared critique of this feels cheap and bad. The land had a sole new ride and it was, you guessed it, screen-based. And in contrast to the majestic landscapes of Cars Land, Pandora, and Galaxy's Edge, this was an office park? It was just kind of a shadeless, empty hellscape with some neat individual structures, but nothing that would wow you at first sight. Still, there was some naive optimism in spite of the shortcomings. People thought, hey, there's some pretty good live character entertainment here, maybe this just needs some time. But with just about every aspect of the land's entertainment recently being cut, for a place that's supposed to be the campus of Avengers and therefore teeming with heroes, at many times, there's nary a single Avenger in sight. And while there is a new ride coming, it appears to also be screen-based, which again is absolutely insane, when for years this was the biggest critique of their competition. Let's not forget, In this time, Disney also opened Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which has some practical sets and so many screens. At the same time, over at Universal, in addition to the upcoming Epic Universe, they brought Super Nintendo World to the US at their Hollywood park in 2023. And it was like the inverse of Avengers Campus. While it too had one ride, an augmented reality experience mixed with practical sets, I guess that's like a screen, the land felt like stepping into a video game. It was alive. There were 5 interactive games, coin blocks to hit, tunnels to explore, and everything was moving. Even the toilets play the music from the water levels. Well, not the toilets themselves, the bathroom, you know what I mean. There's a distinctly fun energy to everything there, with regularly scheduled meet and greets of the main characters and lively music, as opposed to randomly running into Iron Man and hearing the Avengers hook over and over and over and over. Like the Wizarding World before it, Super Nintendo World continued the tradition of a truly immersive, interactive experience that encouraged repeat visits. While not without its faults, it was a pretty remarkable feat, and especially in its first year, was a smash success. Disney has not opened a new land since Avengers Campus, and by the time their next creation is completed, the Tropical Americas area at Animal Kingdom in Orlando, 6 years at minimum will have passed. And while that is less time than Universal had between Wizarding World West and Super Nintendo World, it somehow feels different. When you look at individual rides and expansions in the same time period, Universal opened Hagrid's Motorbike Adventure in 2019, a ride that's one of the top roller coaster experiences on the planet, something that subverted expectations and ride tropes and impresses from start to finish. While Disney opened Tron Light Cycle Run in 2023 after years of construction, and that was just a clone of a ride they already had built 7 years prior. Today, Universal has Epic Universe on tap, a brand new park with 5 themed lands, and it looks absolutely spectacular. They're also opening Horror Unleashed, a permanent version of their Halloween Horror Nights event later this year in Las Vegas, along with building a brand new park for little kids in Texas scheduled to open next year. That's a lot of nuts! Outside of the new Avengers Campus rides and the Tropical Americas, Disney has nothing moving. They've announced a bunch of stuff, like a new Coco ride, not started, a Monsters Inc. land, not started, a Villains Land, not started, another Avatar thing in Anaheim, not started, and a bunch of other stuff with no dates attached, which with Disney usually means happening? Question mark? Maybe? And with the noticeable trend that's been happening since arguably 2017, is there any confidence that these new things are going to be any good? While Universal built an entire theme park that incredibly matches the concept art almost beat for beat, Disney seems to always be scaling back their physical output from what they themselves teased in the concepts. What's more, this decline in effort isn't just about new things. The upkeep and refreshing of their existing offerings, traditionally a Disney hallmark, is way off from where it used to be. There were presented refurbs and reimaginings that were completely cut. There are existing attractions, most notably Journey into the Imagination in Orlando, that are woefully in need of some love, especially if the IP is going to be continuously plated up to sell merch. There are so many buildings sitting empty. There are theaters with no shows. There's an entire land with a rotting attraction that hasn't been open in decades just chilling there. They are getting rid of literal historic attractions and demolishing what is, at its heart, the very essence of what made a Disney park different for Cars IP. Because water is boring and IP sells, I guess? Despite having plenty of space to put the new attraction elsewhere. And on top of all this, in news that's current as of the making of this video, Bob Iger has already proactively jumped out and answered a question no one was really asking about how the US's newly imposed tariffs are going to affect the speed of construction. Disney has always prided itself on an absolutely top-tier level of customer service and prioritizing the guest experience as a rule. It's how so many would rationalize the cost. What you were getting was worth it because it was an experience you truly couldn't get anywhere else. But with no new offerings for at least a few years, declining attendance, and a flashy new competitor down the road, how on earth can Disney keep these parks, or at least keep the appearance of keeping these parks profitable?
Number 6. Exploiting the diehards is not a sustainable business model.
Disney undoubtedly has its share of diehards. They're some of the most passionate and sweetly awkward people on the planet. There's no cost too high for them to keep the parks in their consideration set. At least there wasn't. Now? I guess we'll see. To keep the company looking profitable in spite of dwindling attendance, Disney imagineered some of their best illusions to the shareholders in years. First, they went back to their old faithful, raising the prices. While Disney cost increases outpacing inflation isn't anything new, the percentages of the price hikes could be described without an ounce of hyperbole as outrageous. Second, they kept the reservation system. Remember in 2020 when social distancing was the rage and there were mandates on capacity so parks used the reservation system to cap attendance? Well, it's 5 years later and Disney remains the only park on the planet to still be using a reservation system. You might think this is still about capacity and providing an optimal guest experience, but friend, you would be so incredibly wrong. It's pretty funny to think that a park that only had to limit capacity like once a year on Christmas Day is now capping attendance amidst dropping ticket sales on a Wednesday in January to keep the crowds thin. The reservation system exists only so Disney can have the closest possible guess on how many people will be there so they staff as minimally as possible while still keeping the parks functional. Because God forbid you have a few more people earning a living on a day that's slow and visitors get exceptional service from the extra attention. Third, and the most offensive, depending on who you ask, is the way they are upselling their FastPass system. First called Genie Plus and then changed to Lightning Lane because Genie Plus was confusing people and also everyone hated it, their FastPass system allows guests to pay around $30+ a day per person to make reservations to skip the lines. I have no issue with the paid FastPass system, and there are plenty of other videos on why this specific system is a nightmare, but the long and short of it is, their paid Lightning Lane slows down the regular line considerably. So when you see a long line, it's usually due to Lightning Lane, making you purchase a product that is the reason for the problem it's remedying. And it doesn't even work for the most popular rides. Those cost another $15+ per person per ride, depending on what it is. If you're just looking at the balance sheet, sure there's money coming in, lots even. But what's the cost? While you're milking every last conceivable dollar out of the people with no limit, when will the attrition of the casual enthusiasts who stop coming because of these prices start to show up? When your best bet for profitability is price gouging your most loyal fans, the same ones who you have called, in public, on purpose, fat, and undesirable, I'm no Wall Street muckety-muck, but I'd say your future doesn't look so hot.
Number 7. Help us, dopey fan. You're my only hope.
Okay, so we know how this happened and why this happened, but we still have one more question left to answer. What can we do to fix it? I know it might not seem this way, but really, I'm not a Disney hater. I used to love these parks. When I moved out to SoCal, I was tickled pink to be an annual pass holder. I really want these parks to be good again. And I know there are a lot of creative people working there who, through no fault of their own, can't get their amazing ideas and passion projects through because their bosses are only concerned about making the next quarter look profitable. The reality is, the best thing that could happen right now for Disney is to completely sell off their parks business to another entity that actually gives a care. It's the reason why Tokyo Disneyland and Disney Sea are so great in spite of what's happening in the US. Because someone other than Disney runs them. Is a sale likely? Probably not. But in the meantime, the simplest way to encourage Disney to get its act together is to stop spending money there. Not forever, just for a little while. Until they learn their lesson. Go check something else out, be it a smaller local park, a trip abroad, or, Epic Universe. Because really, if Epic Universe is a smash success and it truly tips the scales of overall vacation dollars being spent into Universal's favor, there will be no other choice than for Disney to go back to basics, to prioritize the customer experience, to invest heavily in creative and let the ideas lead the way, and, do all the things that made them the world's premier theme park destination in the first place. Even if you're not feeling epic for whatever reason, there are so many other things to do and places to spend your money out there where you will be genuinely appreciated for your business. I know it's tough to quit the Disney bug. I'm well aware that theme parks are silly places in the grand scheme of things, but I absolutely advocate for their real-life value. They're the foundation of some of our fondest memories, a place where we can form lifelong connections, the epicenter of where we can leave reality for a little bit and surround ourselves with living art, creativity, and imagination. Still, if you love something, sometimes it's best to let it go. To wrap this up, let me leave you with a quote from Walt Disney himself from way back in 1955. You don't build it for yourself. You know what the people want, and you build it for them. It isn't always easy, and it isn't always cheap, but it's what keeps them coming back. 70 years from now, if someone named, I don't know, making up a name here, let's say he's named Bob. If someone named Bob decides that timeshares and cruise ships and streaming services are the future, and he decides to neglect the park while also upselling our visitors and providing less, well, I guess I won't care too much because I'll be gone. But hey, at least they won't be parading me around as an animatronic, right? Okay, I might have paraphrased there a little bit, but you get the point.
Wow, you made it to the end of the video. That's awesome. You're probably like one of 15 people to actually do that. This shirt is pretty sweet, right? It'd be awesome if you bought it. There's a link in the description. I couldn't make it easier. Or just like, I guess you could subscribe. That's free. Bye!